Welcome to the Dom Sub Devotion Podcast. Every episode of Dom Sub Devotion is an authentic reflection of our real life in a loving 24/7 DS marriage. If you crave the passion and intensity of a power exchange dynamic inside of a deeply loving and intimate relationship, you've found the right place. You can always find more from us in the show notes and at infinitedevotion.com. Thank you for listening.
So one of the biggest reasons we do this podcast is because we want our experience to be able to help other people as they sort through and learn their way through these power exchange dynamics for themselves.
Absolutely.
And that's why doing these question and answers like we're going to do today are one of our favorite things to do, because instead of just talking about what we want to talk about, we get to reflect back to people on what their questions are and where they are. And I know that anyone who asks us a question, there are probably 100 other people out there listening who have wondered that or didn't even know or think about to ask it. So these have always been very popular with our listeners and our watchers. So we do these relatively regularly. And it seems like the more of them we do, the better questions we get.
Yeah, that's been true.
And today, we're probably going to record this in two parts because we have so many questions and we have so many good ones. Usually we'll kind of filter through and pick the good ones. They were all good this time. But
Cool.
very, very interestingly, this is the first time ever that we asked for questions for a Q&A and nobody asked about your collar.
Well, maybe we've talked about that plenty now.
That breaks like a 3-year streak of every single Q&A had a collar question until today.
Yeah, including the ones on Instagram only. Yeah.
So this time we have mostly questions that are asked of you, people who want to know, people always want to know more about your perspective and your experience. You are fascinating to me, and I think fascinating to everyone. So
A little bit of crazy.
I like wild better.
Oh, I like crazy. I mean, I like the song Crazy Bitch, so it's fun.
Some Buck Cherry from about 20 years ago.
I don't feel like anything negative when I say crazy because I know what I mean.
So the first two questions actually came together, and they were from someone who's newer to submission. And the first one, she wanted to know, how did you get over feeling like you needed to be something or do something independent in your life?
I love that question. The interesting thing for me is I never felt like I had to. Now, I want to give a little backstory to that because, innately we have desires. And I do believe that we can be misled by what our true desires are inside, by our upbringing, the childhood, early life experiences, the people that we look up to, the world, the just like the social norms, depending on where you're from and who are those people, who are the adults in your life and what do their lives look like. And so without even recognizing it, we can like grow up making these belief systems on who and what we need to be. And we all do that to some regard. But I do see a trend in today's world where women are feeling like they need to be something. And I get it. There is, I believe like there is a desire to have a purpose and to have something meaningful. Um, but it doesn't have to come through a job, and that's an easy route though. You go through school, and then it's like go to college and figure out your life and make something of it and be something and prove yourself. But all of that can be coming from an external validation. And so, you know, back to my experience, yes, I had the demonstration of some like responsibility and work and whatever, but it wasn't about a career. It was about having an income to make money to support your family. It was much less about proving yourself or really, I don't really remember a lot of talk at all. I grew up in more blue collar families. And again, it was a way to provide. And so I don't feel like I was influenced by that boss babe energy that can be a real thing. Um, and so the important thing here for all of us is truly being able to tune into who am I and where are my desires coming from? Are they coming from me or are they coming from a belief system or something that was demonstrated to me? Or, gosh, maybe I don't even know.
Or who did I have to be, or who was I trying to impress
Right,
by pursuing what I thought I was supposed to want?
right. And an important question is, I'm going to say parents, but it's really caregivers, intertwined here is like, who did you have to be for them? Who were they encouraging you to be? And is that what you want for your life? And it might change, right? Like you might want a job right now and then decide that later on you don't because that doesn't feel good anymore. So the important thing is honoring where you are right now as and be as authentic as you can be and know that this journey into authenticity is a journey and it's meant to be because we can't really know what we've stuffed all inside of us until we start to question it for real, which is going to take time and patience and compassion and a lot of self love.
Yeah, a lot of this I see in women that I've worked with in coaching practice and whatnot. There's almost this unquestioned expectation that I'm going to have a very successful career, obviously.
Hmm.
And very few people have ever questioned, do I actually want that? Or am I just doing it because it's what I think I'm supposed to do?
Right.
And the second question from this person was, how do you not get bored?
Hmm. Well, I can't say that I have never felt bored, but I will say that I can more so relate to that word when I was living in a more egoic survival mode of living, which I didn't allow myself to get bored.
Mm-hmm.
I filled my life with a doing energy of getting everything done. Like, you didn't find me relaxing without putting something in my mind. Like, my relaxing probably was only reading a book. And even in that, back then, that was a distraction. I didn't know it, but it was. I didn't really sit still. Once again, that's kind of what was modeled for me. It
Mm-hmm.
was a very responsible energy to life, constantly always doing something. And you know what? In certain aspects of life, like that can be necessary. But again, as a child, I made my own belief systems about what all those things meant. And so when I started down this path of truly connecting to myself, I had to start stepping away from a lot of things and create some space. And that did come in spending time alone, which I'll be real, felt uncomfortable at the start because it was so different and it was like confronting because now all of a sudden I was going to have space and time to start to witness myself.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's confronting to the ego. So now I thrive in a slower pace of life. I thrive in the way that you've set up our lives to have the slow mornings on the norm. Um, to just have space to myself each day, and I thrive in the sunshine. And so a lot of times that's maybe 15 minutes, maybe an hour of just being outside. A lot of times it's my time to close my eyes and just be present with myself. And it's life giving, it's necessary, and it doesn't feel like boredom. And the other thing that, like, having that space and being where I am at today has allowed my true desires of how I get to be creative and how I get to spend my time on what feels good to me. And so I get to use creativity in the kitchen with recipes and making up my own things and baking and doing all of that. I get to use creativity and my own gifts and making scrapbooks and, calendars and stuff for my parents for Christmas. And also, we get to spend a lot of time together. And so I love that. Like, I don't take that for granted. But to me, that just feels so nourishing to my soul. And so I don't, like, in that question, I can sense the where I used to be. I can sense the, like, oh, like, if I give up all these things, that equals I'm going to have nothing to do. And is feminine really just sitting doing nothing? Is that what being means? And a lot of times, I've said this so many times in different regards, that whatever associations and assumptions that we start to make when we're shifting into a different way of living and being, a lot of times we jump to that, like, opposite. So if we were in a very constantly busy, distracted way of being, we kind of jump to the, like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get bored in life, like, I'm gonna have nothing to do, and, like, who am I gonna be? But it's you're gonna find somewhere in the middle, right? And just to summarize this, that slowing down was essential for me to really come into, even start to get to know, back to the first question of, who am I? What do I believe for me? What do I want out of life? Honestly, for the first time in my life, I started to actually ask the bigger questions.
Yeah. And it's not like submission means that you just don't do anything.
Not at
The,
all.
the way, and we know who this person is, and we know like the person who's leading her in her particular life is approaches this a lot like I do, which is I'm not looking to have you just sitting around on the couch, bored, staring at a wall, waiting for me to tell you to do something. I want you to be doing things that fill you with life and with joy and with aliveness and with fun and with pleasure,
Hmm.
and not be doing things that are putting you into obligation, performance, and forcefulness. So it's not about doing nothing. It's just about not doing anything that takes you out of being your authentic self and doing the things that fill you up.
Yeah. And I kind of, like, this was one of those pendulum swing things for me. It was like I had to break certain patterns, and you knew it. And so you took certain things away from me. And so now all of a sudden it was like, I don't have anything to do. Now what? And so it really forced me, not by like force, but I couldn't not come face to face with the little things that were like, well, you should be doing the laundry, or you should be doing that, or what about this and what about that? And so that's what I talk about, is that's the space I got to have for the first time when I wasn't constantly doing and distracted. And that's what truly has helped me turn into the woman I am today. It was necessary.
Next question. How did you know you had it in you to be a sub?
Well, I'm thinking of how I want to summarize this. So, we've shared our whole beginning, so I'm not going to go into that whole story. But I didn't really know what dominance and submission really was. And so when you came to me and asked, you did a really good job of describing what you could about how our lives would be different and the truth of what you truly wanted for me in my life experience from the very start. And so I sat with that. I tried to ask questions. We talked a lot about it. I took my 30 days, I think almost, to think about it. But then at the end, something was just speaking to me inside that I needed to jump in with 2 feet because I couldn't know what life was actually going to look like when I was grasping to understand and grasping for that control and certainty. And so for me, it was this whisper of go and follow.
And what I would say is that I saw in you that you had everything in you to live this life that I've led you into.
And you did a very good job of highlighting what that was already. Yeah,
Right. Because in a lot of ways you were already very submissive
to the wrong people.
to the to the wrong people and to anyone who would tell you what to do that you thought was an authority figure.
Hmm.
So a part of the very early conversations around making you into my submissive was me telling you that you were actually going to become less submissive, probably overall in your life with other people, and direct all of that energy that was already in you into me, where it
Yes,
would be appreciated, valued, and taken care of and protected.
yes, absolutely. I love that. Thank you for that reflection.
This next person wants to know, how do you tell Sir what's bothering you or things you're worried about in a way that's honest and respectful, especially when they might come across as criticism?
Well, my commitment to myself and to you is um, honest expression and complete transparency as much as I can understand my internal experience. And so I have to drop the fear of how you're going to receive any of it because I can't control you, nor do I want to. And so I trust you to receive me even when it's hard. I trust you to receive me when it's easy, but I can trust you to receive me even when I'm making an assumption that it's going to be hard for you. Because again, I don't get to determine your experience. And if I'm making an assumption that this is going to be hard for you to hear, I'm probably abandoning myself a little bit and shape shifting what I'm expressing. And so, you know what? Once in a while, there's times where I've been like really loud and expressive. And like, I remember one time you were like, you can be respectful. And I was like, oh, you asked for open expression. Like, I'm going to be big with it because I love you always. And when I'm feeling something so like conflicting inside of me and I can't make sense of it, I also trust you to receive it and make sense of it for me and to come back to me and be like, here's what's going on. And, you know, I remember one time where recently where you were like, this is the ego. And in the moment, my ego was screaming, no, it's not. I was sitting there with myself witnessing this going on. And all I did was be with it, be with the whole experience, knowing that you were probably just like, fuck, again, like, come on in the experience. But when I get to give all of that and lay it down, it continues to open me. It's hard to explain. Of it actually draws us together, especially when maybe I am operating from my ego, and you come back to me, and I know I can trust you to know the difference, and you come back to me and you're like, this is the ego. I kind of love getting put in my place.
Well, and you need to in those moments because you can't see yourself when you get lost. Like, and this is you, but this is also the universal you, like
Yes.
everyone. You can't see yourself when you are triggered and in your ego and in these responsive, reactive spaces.
I was 95% sure I was operating from my ego, and I still just had, it felt like I had to let it happen one more time
Yeah.
the last time.
Yeah. And I, I know exactly what you're talking about here. And I saw it happening in real time. Like I felt it happening. And I did allow and receive everything that you had to share. But I also put some boundaries up. That was when I told you you can be respectful. Like you can share all of this, but you don't get to be mean about it. You don't get to be disrespectful to me in the sharing. And that's my own boundaries, right? I'm not, even by you, I'm not going to be mistreated, even when I know that you are not seeing yourself, you're not in yourself. And it's not coming from you actually feeling a sense of disrespect for me. You're just not in your own body.
That's a whole nother conversation in itself, because where's the line of um, authentic expression and disrespect? And that's going to be a personal thing that each person has to communicate with each other. I mean, there's no right or wrong there, because I truly believe that certain words are just going to feel disrespectful to certain people and others aren't. So,
No, and
side note, that's not something that I really want to get into, but
yeah, it's case by case too.
right.
The next question is somewhat related to that one, but this person says I want to surrender more, but my husband struggles to control his temper. It doesn't make me feel safe. How do I express this without upsetting him?
Well, if you fear upsetting another person, you're making it about them. And so if you want to express yourself, it has to be for you and all about you, but obviously in response to how someone else is treating you and showing up. So you have to squash the fear. You have to stand on it and not let it overtake you. Now, I can't remember how that question was answered. I'm not sure if there's a fear for physical safety here.
Well, that isn't made clear, but it is something I certainly wanted to make sure we address.
Okay, I'll let you take that in a moment, but like you have to be willing to like choose yourself and express fully how someone else's actions and anger is impacting you, assuming they want to and are able to hear it. Like that's a whole nother story. So like there's just a lot of unknowns in this on how
Yeah.
to actually truly answer this question.
First and foremost, if you fear for your physical safety, you need to protect yourself. You need to get out of there and you need to like look after yourself, period.
Mm-hmm.
If this is a verbal temper or a um, just a losing control of emotions
You mean the
when
emotionally abusive?
right when someone's upset, you can try different ways of expressing yourself. You can maybe write something and give it in a letter versus trying to talk about it if the person shuts down and doesn't hear you or turn goes red and turns the level up to 10. But if you as a woman stop expressing how you feel in response to how your man is showing up, you are robbing him of the opportunity to see himself and to notice how his actions are affecting you.
Yes.
And this can never get better if you are pulling back because you're afraid of his expression, because
Right.
his expression is about him and what's going on inside of himself. And just like I just said to you, when you are in that triggered state, which is all a temper is, it's an ego trigger. When you're in that triggered state, you can't see yourself. So you cannot protect a man from how you feel about the way that he's showing up, or it will never get better. It will just get worse because now you are training that person's ego exactly how to shut you down.
Yes, but I also want to emphasize the point that this is for you too. And so if you are not speaking up, that is self-abandonment right there,
Yep.
period. And you can't be yourself if you're abandoning yourself.
Right. And you can never receive the love and affection and appreciation and everything that you desire if you're not bringing all of yourself, if you're not
Exactly.
making yourself that vulnerable.
It's all wrapped up together.
And if you can't do that without fear, then you really have to start questioning at what point can I can I trust this person with all of me?
Yeah, because actions are going to speak louder than words.
Mm-hmm. The next question is, how do you manage both relationships together, being husband and wife and dom and sub?
Um, it's all one. It has, in my experience, it always has had to be all one. And I believe that you've done a very good job of leading this from the beginning, even though our dynamic is way more all encompassing now than it was when we started, but rightly so. Like it could only be so much as there was so much to work through and to bring awareness to and to grow into together. Like that's the beauty of this, that it can grow, you know? So if you're looking at this as separate, like to me, that would make me feel like I need to flip it on and off. And that would make me feel like I'm more in a play and it's more performative. And that would feel gross to me. Like, am I in it or am I not? Am I in it or am I not? Like, how about now?
And then it's never authentic. It's always a game.
Right.
The next question is probably my favorite question we've ever gotten in any Q&A.
Oh, what's this one?
Someone wants to know, what's Andrew like in real life? He seems too good to be true.
We did get a similar one to this one time, and it was asked a little bit differently.
Yeah, so tell me, what am I like in real life? I seem too good to be true.
You know what? I can honestly understand why someone would say that, why you seem too good to be true, but you're not. You are very real. And to all of our audience, I am here telling you that everything that I hear this man say on these podcasts to clients, it's who he is and how he truly shows up. It's why I am the woman I am today. I would not be who I am without you. Like, you have led me along, holding my hand, sometimes with me kicking and screaming, willingly going still. But the truths that you've seen in me have been completely contradictory to everything that felt like my early life experience taught me, which then I perpetuated for myself in the way I was showing up in the world. And you've shown me this truth that lives inside of me and the way that I experience my own life experience, my own body, my own pleasure for me now. I don't even know the percentage difference. It's like not even the same human being. I'm the same soul. And that's what really has been able to come to the surface. And so, is he perfect? Pretty damn close. But no, you're still a human being. You're still a soul here with having this human experience. And so, yeah, you've had collapses. You've had your own fires to walk through that we got to walk through together. Like, and you've walked me through mine. And that's what this is all about. And the beauty that I'm going to say as an us thing is that we both are here showing up every single day with the desire to live big and to love big and to have the best damn life experience possible. And that truly has always been in you to some degree. And that's what I got to come along with alongside of you on this journey. And the way that you would live that way, even in your unconscious patterns, you were like no one else I had ever seen in life. And you brought me into yours and loved me in a way that nobody else had. And so how could I not like follow you and open myself to you and love you? Like my soul, I feel has just deeply loved you from the very start. And I can't not follow you. Like it's that deep and meaningful to me.
Thank you. And thank you for asking that question to whoever did ask it anonymously. The thing I'd like to say to that question, to whoever asked it, is no, I'm not too good to be true, but I am committed to the truth.
Yes.
And I've committed my life to being as good as I can be on every level, physical, emotional, spiritual, sexual.
Yeah.
I am I approach life with a constant growth mindset, which means I'm always looking for where I can be better. Now, in my past, that used to be tied up with a lot of trying to get away from the things about myself that I hated.
Yeah.
Like I had those patterns too. But even in that, it was always about improvement. It was always about growth. And this is what I think where a lot of men get lost is they get stuck in trying to avoid or get away from what they don't like. But my commitment to myself has always been, and more so as I've gotten older, has been that I want to see how good I can get. We talked about this in a recent episode where we were talking about how good can this life get. And for me, it's also like, how good can I get? How solid can I be? How strong can I be? How open can I be? How present can I be? How aware can I be? How loving can I be? And if any man wants that badly enough and just continues to pursue it and look for 1% improvements across his life over time, he's going to turn into a pretty impressive man.
Yeah. And I want to add to that, like all of what you said, 100% completely true. You've also been on this journey for probably over 10 years since you've like recognized some of your own patterns that you wanted to shift. You got to a point where you needed me to come alongside of you to keep growing. And so I had to follow, or we wouldn't be here today, probably.
No, because if one person grows and the other stays the same, you're going to grow apart.
Right. So I've had to grow along with you. Now, you've never been able, you can't force me to do that. And so, what I do want to say is, he is an example of what is possible. In no way do we ever encourage comparison because we
Right.
each are on this journey for ourselves and we've each had our own life experiences that have given us opportunities to become more of ourselves. And they're all going to look different, even if you're in the same family and even if you're twins. Nobody has the same life experiences or the same relationships or the same challenges to overcome, even if we can relate to each other, because we all have something.
Yeah, comparison's a real killer. And that's, this is all both dominant and submissive. This is always about inward growth, not outward growth. And if you're comparing yourself to someone else, like, well, they're like this, I should be more like them, or, you know, I'm not as good as that person, or I'm better than that person, or at least I'm not as bad as that person. All of that is external. All of that is evidence that you are still operating inauthentically and not out of pursuit of your inner truth. So comparison will just kill anything because it's not real. Nothing can be real, except that if you find yourself in comparison, now you have something to point to recognize, oh, I'm looking out there for what I really should be looking inside of myself for.
Yeah. And bring curiosity rather than judgment to it if you find yourself doing it, because it just is like we've all done it. to some degree. And
Yep.
so it's not something to be harsh about. Just notice that, bring it back to you, bring it inward.
So that'll be the end of Pump It Up, Pump Andrew Up, the Pump Andrew Up section of this episode.
Oh, I could do that all day long. I fucking love you.
The next question that people want to know about you is, what were the first steps to undoing your religious upbringing and programming?
Well, the very first step was setting it aside for me. We left organized religion together because you had come back to it when we were dating,
Mhm.
gave it another chance and a little bit different flavor, if you will, different kind of church. Um, and so, I said, what I mean by setting it over there is when we left, I was in it my whole life up until, gosh, that was in my 30s, I think, earlier 30s. I don't know how long ago that was. And inside of me, I just believed that God was still real, but something about my religion experience did not line up. And I trusted that when the time was meant for me to truly know and understand God, that I would. Initially, I found myself wanting to constantly ask you, like, well, who is God to you? And like, what is God? Like, help me understand. Like just seeking to understand. But then eventually I'm like, you know what? I'm going to drop it and I'm going to trust. And I have, like, I'm not going to go deeply into it, but I've had a very profound experience with God that through you, but also inside of me. And so there's been the making sense of, if you will, is has come from the feeling of the experience of God in me, God in you, and God in everywhere. And now I continuously connect to some of that early religion experience in a whole new way. Like for a while, it was like, why did I have to experience that? I'm like, wait a minute, it's not all bad. And so then I began to trust that the beauty of that experience, I would begin to see and experience now too, in the felt way. And I have. And again, religion is a personal experience. No two people going to the same church or even in the same family probably have the same exact belief systems and experiences in any of it. So the experience of God is a very personal thing.
Yeah. And just like we talk about with submission, like the first step is all we always tell people, the first step, if you want to really embrace a healthy inner submission, you've got to slow down. Like you
Yeah.
got to slow down, you got to take a deep breath, and you have to stop trying so hard.
Hmm.
So that's the first step to anything, because you can't see what you need to see when you are running and running and running and running and busy and full all the time.
Hmm.
So I would always say that that's the first step. I will also add that there was one particular essay, blog post that we read that it really hit us upside the heads.
Yeah.
And this was called Into the Wild by a guy named Darren Hufford, who was a former pastor who had left the church and who was now teaching people about God from outside of the confines of religion.
Yes.
And there was this blog post that he wrote called Into the Wild. If I can find it, I will link it in the show notes of this episode, because it summed up so much of what I had always kind of understood on some level about the difference between God and religion.
Yeah.
And that was an essential piece of starting to see why. we needed to take that break.
Yep.
Next question. Do you or did you ever struggle with thoughts that you were being used?
No, that's never been my experience. But I'll say I kind of like it. So there's a little glimpse into me.
We're going to have to pause the recording now. We'll be back in just a moment. And now
Yeah,
we're
in
back.
in the fun, sexy way. I like it. That kind of just surfaced in a fun way. But no, I've never been used. I've never felt used by you. I don't really know what to expand on there because I don't relate to that at all.
What I would say to someone if they do feel like they are, maybe, or maybe they're concerned that they're being used or taken advantage of, or, somehow not being treated well or respectfully, is to look objectively, like try to take the lenses off of what you think you're supposed to be doing. Start looking at things like people pleasing and codependency and see if any of those patterns are playing out in your life.
Yeah.
Look up um, and read. There's a book called Codependency No More by Melody Beatty. There's a really wonderful creator on Instagram named Haley Page McGee
Yeah, she's good.
who writes a lot about these things in a really approachable, understandable way.
Easy to digest.
Yep. And if you feel like you are being used, or maybe, or you don't know, like, is this healthy? Is this okay? Is it not okay? Start looking again inward and see, is there something that you're like, ways that you're abandoning yourself and giving yourself away? Um, Also, there are communities of people in the dominance and submission and BDSM worlds. Like on Reddit, there's a group called, I think it's called BDSM Answers. There are also groups on FetLife where you can go bring your legitimate experience and look for input from people outside who aren't in it,
Yeah.
where you can share what's happening in your life and look for, like, is this unhealthy, or am I maybe seeing it incorrectly, or is there something that I might be missing, and really look for some objective external advice from people who are experienced, who are, again, not in and mixed up in the emotion of the situation.
Yep. I will also add if you are feeling like I think I'm being used, you probably are to some degree, but um, do some research and start looking at what is your place in that because you're the only one who can allow yourself to be used.
Right. Which also means that you can choose differently.
Right. Like you have a choice in it.
Mm-hmm. You can get out.
Yep. Protect yourself.
You can speak up for yourself. You can speak up for your needs. You can set solid boundaries.
Yeah.
The next person asks, I still find it hard to fully open up myself to being sexually submissive. How can I embrace my role? And I think with this question, we have to make the assumption that this person wants to open herself up more to this.
Um, so I'm feeling the fears. And so that's some of where you need to look at is fear and shame. And those answers are going to come through your body, be healed through your body. Um, I truly believe it's possible to experience the sexual liberation and freedom if you desire it. It's going to be a process. So, again, patience and compassion, but start sitting with yourself and asking yourself some of the questions of What am I afraid of? And maybe it's specific things that you're afraid of that you want to experience. And so let the questions permeate your experience instead of trying to get to an answer, and be willing to sit back and kind of listen in life. And sometimes fears are simply just coming from our mind of what's the worst case scenario that might happen. And so if you're in a relationship where you feel like you can trust, like there's ways to push edges in safe ways, in slow ways, in like nothing has to go 0 to 10. Again, I don't know specifically what it is. And so baby steps, you know, and you should have a no.
Mm-hmm.
If,
And a safe word.
yeah, I was just going to say, like, the typical one is like yellow, green, and red, you know? And so really use your voice and speak up and be in constant communication when you're trying something new.
Yeah.
Dep Again, depending on what it is, I don't know, but try not to have the ball gag again. You need your
Well,
voice.
a part of this is, are there assumptions being made around what you have to do because you are a submissive?
Fair point.
And there are not.
Yes.
Just because you maybe feel like submission is something that you want, that you desire, it doesn't mean you have to do bondage. It doesn't mean you have to do impact play. It
No.
doesn't mean you have to participate in sadism and masochism. It doesn't mean you have to do anything that you don't want to do.
Right.
So the most important thing I hear in this question is, if you are struggling to be a sexual submissive, there's one of two things happening. You are either trying to make yourself want things you don't want, or be open to things that you're not open to, maybe yet, or maybe at all,
Yep.
or you're trying to push too fast,
Yep. That's possible.
or there's also the possibility that you are very uncomfortable with allowing yourself to experience the things that you do want.
Yes. Which is also very
And
possible.
you have to know the difference. And this is something that a dominant needs to be able to lead his submissive through, to help her see what is it that's actually getting in the way here. And to not put expectations on her that she needs to do certain things because she's a submissive. Now, he may really want those things, and they may be off limits for her. You may have incompatibility there,
Yeah.
but you can't know this unless you communicate, to your point, unless you speak about it openly and have vulnerable, real communication. There's no space in these kind of relationships for the violation of consent. And consent means that the dominant gets to have the things that they want, and the submissive gets to have the things that they want and that are off limits. And there's no space to violate that just because, well, you're a submissive, you're supposed to.
Right. And I would say have those vulnerable conversations outside of the sexual encounters,
Yes.
because in order to surrender, you can't be lost in your mind or trying to talk through how it's going to go, what's going to happen. Like, have those conversations outside of the bedroom. And
Very, very good point.
yeah, have clear communication around how those edges are going to be pushed if they are.
Next person wants to know, she says, a wife is to be a complement to her man. How do I do this without overstepping my sub role?
Hmm. I'm going to let you speak first on this one,
Okay.
because I think you're going to help me gain some clarity on what might be the deeper question.
The thing that I hear in this question, first of all, is that there are a lot of preconceived notions, assumptions, and expectations around what a wife is supposed to be.
Or a submissive or
Right. A wife is to be a complement to her man.
yeah,
Well, a submissive is a complement to her dominant.
right.
So what I'm hearing in here is probably like, how do I do things for him and help him without kind of jumping into a caretaker role where I'm not letting him lead me? And I think, and when I hear this question, I think that first of all, a dominant who's leading his wife as his submissive needs to have clear communication with her about what is and isn't expected.
Yes.
And then on her side, the if you have these two things wrapped up together, meaning caretaking and giving, you need to decouple those things. Like you can give without putting yourself in a mothering role. You can give without putting yourself in a responsibility role.
Yes.
So I see this as giving from your heart, giving out of genuine desire to give, not doing things for him that maybe he doesn't even want you to do for him. So instead, maybe asking, what are the ways that you would like me to serve you, sir?
Yeah, no man needs another mother. They need to detach from their mother to begin with,
Yeah. And
to be a man.
no woman needs to mother her man
Nope.
because she's not going to be turned on by a man who she has to caretake, whether she has to caretake him or whether she can't stop herself from doing it. Either way, if she puts herself in that role in the relationship to him, there's not going to be much turn on in that relationship.
Yeah. And I want to emphasize this that caretake does not mean you can't do acts of service. It's the energy underneath. And some of these can be unconscious patterns and belief systems that are playing into who and what you think you need to be for him. And I had to like decouple all of that for myself. And it only brings out true authenticity in the way that I want and desire to serve you.
The next question kind of tags along with this one, asking about how do I make sure my needs are met when I'm looking after his.
Is that how the question is asked?
The specific wording was, as a sub, how do I not feel like my needs are being unmet while I'm addressing his needs?
Well, a couple things there. You have to speak up if you aren't for your needs. Because, as wonderful as you are, you cannot completely read my mind. Sure, you can know some things that I need better than I need for myself and blah blah blah. But if I have a need that's going unmet, I have to speak up. Now, the second part is I'm not responsible for your needs. I get to meet them. I feel a difference there. So if I feel like anything like a drag in meeting a need of yours, there's something that needs to be looked at. There's something that I can learn about myself. Because what I've watched and experienced for myself is the difference in obligation and how desire to meet your needs becomes like a fire in me, this fuel in me. Like I want to give these things to you in a way that I didn't experience in the past. So all of this for me has become more real the deeper I've gotten to truly connect with my own soul, my own sexuality, and all that entails.
Yeah, I feel some people pleasing in this question, like
Yeah.
some energy of, like, obviously I have to give him everything he wants.
Yeah.
And then how do I get my own needs met?
Yeah. And like, is it imbalanced?
Right.
Are there room for your needs to be brought, or is there just not room for that?
Well, and the way that I approach this is the submissive's needs come before the dominant's needs.
Yeah.
This is
Thank you.
this is very important in a healthy dom sub dynamic because If you're going to let go of control and turn your life over to me to lead you and actually just follow me wherever I take you, you have to be able to in order to do that for real, you have to really feel a sense of trust
Hmm.
that your needs are going to be looked after and met,
Right.
because everyone needs to have their needs met. That's why they're called needs. They're not negotiable. So it's almost the price of entry, so to speak. If you want to have this the kind of depth in the dynamic like we do, that the dominant, I in our case, need to be able to set my needs below yours and make sure that you are looked after and that you feel looked after and taken care of so that you can follow me. Now, this doesn't mean my needs don't get met. It just means that sometimes in certain incidents or certain experiences or for certain periods of time, I might need to just set mine down and come back to them a little later so I can look after yours. If there's conflict, most of the time there's not actually conflict. We
Right.
can find win-wins in almost everything.
Right.
But there's really no case where you have a healthy dynamic where the submissive's needs are being disregarded.
No, that's a doormat.
Right. So the last question for part one is, how do I make him dominant?
You can't.
You can't.
You can't make another person into something they don't choose for themselves. So, what you can do is share your desires for what you want to experience, but I can't make you into any more of a man than you want to be for yourself. I can't want you to have more integrity for yourself. I can't will you to be anything different than who you are.
Yeah. We only control ourselves.
Right.
We only have the ability to change who we are. And it's hard fucking enough to change yourself.
Yes.
If it was so easy to make someone else into something else, like we would all just be walking around with magic wands, just fixing everyone else. But if we want something out of someone else, all that we can do is express that desire and then work on being our side of it.
Yeah, and I just want to speak briefly to that is when you share the desire, it's much different when you share it about yourself and what I would want to experience versus I want you to be more dominant. I need you to have more integrity and I need you to take charge in all of our areas of our life. If I approached anything that way, how would you respond to that?
I would tell you that all that's great, but you're not telling me what to do.
Yeah.
And in the past, I would have had a really defensive energy to that.
Hmm.
Like, I've never been the type who likes to be told what to do,
And I've always known that.
ever.
So that's something I've had to overcome, that knowing of that thing that you felt and how does that play into me speaking up for what I need and want?
Yeah, because before I had really done my own work, I would get very defensive. And in that, I trained you in a way not to speak up
Yeah.
because like, I made it so that it was very uncomfortable for you to share with me what I really needed to hear. Because a lot of times what I need to hear the most is exactly what I don't want to hear.
Right.
So, that's how it would have been in the past. Now, I don't take what you say as trying to tell me what to do.
Right.
But if you do try to tell me what to do, I just kind of chuckle at you. And then I do what I was going to do anyway.
Yep.
It's not that I don't hear you. If you have valid points, I'll hear them,
Right.
but I'm not going to just be bossed around by you. You can
No.
try all you want.
Once in a while, I let something silly slip from an old habit, but I
Yeah,
think I've come a long way in that.
yeah. And I usually just laugh it off
Yeah. And I appreciate that.
because dominance is a state of being. It's not something that you do.
Hmm.
And if I'm dominant in here, in my heart, in my body, if I feel strong, I feel good about myself, I have self worth, I'm not going to let anyone tell me what to do. I will take good information. I will take input. I'll take feedback. You can even try to tell me what to do, but it's not going to upset me, trigger me, set me off, make me angry or upset
Right.
because you're trying to tell me what to do. This is a problem with a lot of the feminine teaching out there that tells women, like, don't ever tell a man what to do. Well, a man won't be told what to do. If you have to avoid saying anything to a man because you're afraid of how he's going to take it, react, or because you don't want to emasculate him, well, guess what? A man who's solid in himself can't be emasculated. He won't allow it.
Yep. And men need the fire of the feminine to grow.
Absolutely. Because nothing nothing has made me grow more than feeling you react to me showing up poorly when I've been a piece of shit in little ways or big. And I feel how you feel in response to that. That is a call to be better for me because I love you and I don't want to make you feel that way. I don't want that to be your experience of me. So instead of trying to convince you not to feel the way you do, I can look at myself and say, I can be better than that.
Right. And I want to do a side note here is this doesn't mean that we get to be manipulative in trying to force our man to see something as a call to rise. Because again, you don't get to control anything. It has to be about you and your own expression for you. You can say what you desire to experience in the relationship and like all of that, but it's never about the finger pointing.
Yeah. Just feel how you feel and let the chips fall where they do.
Yep.
Well, this has been fun, and we've only made it through about half of our questions.
Well, cool. Part two, then, huh?
So we will come back with part 2 of this episode coming up next week.
Awesome.